Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Triple Feature. This is a very special episode. I'm going to be going over 10 films from 10 different genres and deciding which is my favorite in each of those genres. I actually got tagged by the Night Watch Zone, which I will put the link down below in the description for you to be able to check them out. Why should you check them out? Because their show's rad. They actually go live about 4 times a week, having really cool discussions about horror films, action films, all sorts of films. You should definitely go check them out. They've been a big supporter of our channel. Now, before I start, I do want to point out something. Since we're a brand new channel and we are trying to grow, we're just trying to reach as many people as possible, trying to make the show as good as possible. And so we're growing and learning that, trying to be able to do that. I want to be able to explain for a second about the algorithm that YouTube uses for why you constantly have YouTubers asking for the like, comment sort of thing. So number one, when we're trying to reach people, the algorithm that YouTube uses is actually the thing that actually reaches out to be able to tell you what you should watch next. It gives you the suggestion on the right side. You're watching this video, on the right side, they're suggesting other videos. Now, one, of course, that's based on other things you've been watching. And then number two, it's also based on those videos they choose by the algorithm. How do those get chosen? Well, number one, you have to look at it from, do they watch the entire video? So if you watch our entire video, it tells YouTube, tells the algorithm that you've been engaged the entire 5 minutes, the entire 10 minutes, the entire 20 minutes, whatever it is. So we have a better chance of being put up for a suggestion. Number two, liking the actual thing. If you actually enjoy the video, then liking also gives the algorithm an idea that you're actually enjoying. You're not just engaged, you're not just watching because you're like, well, this sucks and I'll watch all 20 minutes and I just disagree, but you actually like the content you're giving, then you actually like it. And so then that also adds something to the algorithm. Number three, also commenting on the thing. That also shows another level of engagement. So you're not only watching the whole video, you're not only just clicking the like, but you're actually saying something. The comment helps a lot, shows that engagement, helps again for us to be able to spread this. Another one, of course, is subscribing. Subscribing is a really big one, that it really shows that you're interested in the channel, that you want to be able to do that. Also, that's what I always talk about, click the notification bell. Notification bell, if you click it right next to it, it also tells you right when we release new videos, so you can get that. You don't have to go look for it and stuff. So all we ask is a new channel. Of course, if you're watching now, if you enjoy what you watch, if for whatever reason, even if you don't like what you're watching, that's fine. But if you do like it, click the like, try to watch the whole thing if possible, comment if you can, and of course, subscribe. And all these things help us just to reach other people. So we're not getting rich or anything off this. At least definitely not at this point. You can look at our subscriber marks. We are literally nothing. So it just helps us to be able to get to reach more and more people by just clicking, saying something in the comment, whatever you want to say, and tell us we suck. That's fine. So anyways, to the video. The first genre that I picked is animation. Now, animation, I thought I could go like the weird route and really get into something like maybe Grave of Fireflies, where you get like an anime that makes you want to kill yourself, but it's a great film. You have the Miyazaki films, of course, stuff like Spirited Away, and that, you know, are just great films. But when it really came down, I thought, what is my favorite animation film and what should be your favorite animation film? That's really what this is about. It's me telling you what your favorite film should be in each genre. And if you disagree with that, well, you're wrong. So my number one animation of all time actually comes from Pixar. And it's the OG of Pixar, and it's Toy Story. Why is it Toy Story? Well, I first saw this movie in high school, and now all these years later, still, the movie holds up. Now, the animation's dated. That's for sure. It was the early in computer animation, so it's different than the hand-drawn. Maybe you go back to old Disney and you actually prefer that. The computer obviously has gotten much better these days. So when it comes to the computer, a lot of it is definitely rough. But the story is still there. The humor is still there. It's still the funniest of all the Pixar movies, in my opinion. It's not the most moving. Toy Story 3 and 4 are definitely built more to try to make you have all the feels. But this movie has the best music, has my favorite story, has my favorite characters all across it, the best humor, and it just works overall the best. And that's why Toy Story is #1 in animation.
Sound system. Probably all copper wiring, huh? So, where you from? Singapore? Hong Kong?
Well, no. Actually, I'm stationed up in the Gamma Quadrant of Sector 4. As a member of the elite Universe Protection Unit of the Space Ranger Corps, I protect the galaxy from the threat of invasion from the evil Emperor Zurg, sworn enemy of the Galactic Alliance.
Oh, really? I'm from Play School. And I'm from Mattel. Well, I'm not...
All right, next genre, adventure. Now, here's the thing about adventure. When you're looking at this, I looked across this. I'm using Letterboxd. I don't know if anybody uses that app, but I type in adventure and it pulls up all the films and see what I rate them and try to look at the different movies. Most everything in adventure can definitely be also in another genre too. So it's not these so many cross genres of trying to pick what the right thing is. So when I was looking over my films for adventure, it really did cross the lines. And so I eventually had to pick a movie directed by Steven Spielberg. Now this may be a little controversial because I know a lot of people that don't like this movie. The ending can be very confusing. And for good reason. Spielberg a lot of times tries too hard for a happy ending. And my #1 adventure movie is AI, Artificial Intelligence. Why is it this movie? This movie really takes you on this long adventure. And it takes you from this, basically this child who is a robot, and takes us through, I'm not even going to give all the spoilers for it, but it takes you on quite the trip. And what it does is it brings you these questions that especially are becoming more relevant today as artificial intelligence keeps becoming smarter. But these questions of what we do with something that's not human and it's not even technically alive, but it seems to feel, it seems to care, it seems to love, and it's built to do that. And what happens when it gets in the way? What happens when it's rejected? And these questions are brought up through this entire film. Dealing with this robot that is built to love its mom, and feeling this rejection and this adventure that it goes on, all to try to gain the love of its mother. This movie is very good, and it holds up very, very well because of the emotion. The emotion works in the film. It makes you feel it from the beginning to end. All right, next category, next genre, documentary. I've seen a lot of documentaries, watched a lot of documentaries. Now, I didn't put in this category stuff like these new documentaries that are like a series of documentaries like Tiger King that you get on like Netflix. I put that's kind of a sub thing, completely different in a lot of ways. Those are built specifically to have big cliffhangers and have all these multiple episodes and hold on to all that sort of stuff. So I picked the documentary I picked is very dark. Very dark. It's very sad. And it took years and years and years for everything to be cleared up, and still not fully cleared up with everything that happened in this documentary. And my choice for best documentary is Paradise Lost. What this thing is about, if you haven't seen it, it is about 3 little kids that were murdered. They were murdered in a very, very vicious way. It even shows the crime scene. It's very disturbing. And it's about the fact that they then, in this small little southern town, arrest 3 teenagers for this crime. 3 teenagers that they deem to be Satan worshipers because of music, because of something said, all these different things. And we watch the trial play out. We watch what goes on as people's fears build up, and the whole time you're wondering what is going to actually happen with these teenagers. Are they guilty? Are they not guilty? Is the town just going crazy? Is this just a witch hunt? It asks all these sort of questions, and it really dives into this, and it dives into something that you don't usually get to watch. And it is my favorite documentary of all time. I first saw it in my law class when I was about 16 years old, and it just blew my mind.
Skelly Jr., Jason Baldwin, Damien Eccles. I promise you, as God is my witness, I'll visit all 3 of your graves.
All right, the next genre is sci-fi. This one was really tough, trying to think of all the different science fiction films, to think what would be my absolute favorite science fiction film. They really came down between 2. And this other one I think just won out because for me it means more. So this movie I first saw with my cousin Drew, shout out, in a theater, and it's called Donnie Darko. Now, this movie is super weird. This movie is about Jake Gyllenhaal, very young. It's got Patrick Swayze in it, so you know it's good. It's also got Maggie Gyllenhaal. It's also got Seth Rogen in his first movie he was ever in. It's got the singer of Phantom Planet, if you've ever heard of that band. This movie is about a kid who survives this crazy thing where he's not sure what happens. He thinks this basically a part of a plane comes into his room, and he happens to survive. And he starts having this giant somebody in a really creepy bunny suit appear to him and start telling him the world is going to end. And a countdown begins. And we start following him on this journey. Movie is insane, and it is weird, but it's super funny, and it's super interesting, and it can be rewatched and discussed a million times, and that's why it's number one. Plus, the name is awesome, too, so...
28 days, 6 hours, 42 minutes, 12 seconds.
I already picked his mystery. Now, a lot of movies, of course, have mystery. So again, this is a weird genre to pick or to really go over. But I try to think of what movie had the mystery that locked me in the most, had the best answer for me. It was told in the best way. It has stuck with me for years. And that movie is Christopher Nolan's first full-length film. He had one before, The Following. But his first film that really hit theaters here, and that's Memento. This movie is told, the best way to explain it, if you've never seen it, it's told from the end to the beginning, and it goes back. So it goes back in spots. Like it starts and it tells a story, and then it jumps back like 10 minutes and then moves up, jumps back like 10 minutes and then moves up, all the way to the beginning to be able to tell a mystery in reverse. It's about a guy trying to find out who killed his wife, but he's got short-term memory loss. And so he's constantly having to remind himself. Therefore, he's tattooed up with reminders of all the clues he have who killed his wife. So he's constantly waking up, not remembering what happened before, has to look at what he's written down, and this slow reveal of getting to the end, which is the beginning, and why this is not only the best mystery movie, but one of the best films ever made. And the best Christopher Nolan film, even though I think Christopher Nolan has made some other just amazing masterpieces. This one is still number one.
Okay, so what am I doing? Oh, I'm chasing this guy. No, he's chasing me.
All right, the next genre is music. I'm not going to say I'm a huge fan of when it comes to like musicals and movies that are all based around music. That's not my big thing. So I have a clear number one for this, and it's not Sound of Music. My number one music film of all time is That Thing You Do. This movie's directed by Tom Hanks. Tom Hanks is also in it. He stars in it. It's about a band that writes a song randomly that they just happen to take off. They go from being in their garage to all of a sudden being on TV, and it follows them. This movie has the best music. It's always funny. It's still funny today, all these years later. And the movie can be watched over and over and over again. That's how good this movie is. It does not get the respect it deserves. It's just always kind of this side thing that people don't really talk about. And yet the movie is probably one of the greatest films ever made. Because of all the music, because of the humor, because of the drama, the acting is all good. Everything that he does here, Tom Hanks kills this movie as a director. If you haven't seen the movie, you should. If you don't like the movie, you're wrong. the next genre I have was family movie. The reason I picked family film, and I want to pick this genre specifically, is I think family films in general do matter. I'm not looking for these sort of movies, but they are a genre that needs to be filled, and have a lot of terrible family films. They just exist, and they're absolutely horrible because they're trying to hit everybody on every mark, and they just don't work. And so I try to think of all the different family films I could think, and of course this crosses genres again. You can say like Toy Story is a family film. All right. So what is my number one family film? This movie is also a bit of a fantasy. It's a bit of a fairy tale. It's not a movie I hear talked about a lot, but I realize when people do talk about it, people realize how good it is. And that movie is called Stardust. This movie takes you on quite the adventure of a guy who's in love with this girl, and he has to cross over through basically what was considered this line into a more magical world, because he sees a shooting star that lands. He says, I'm going to get that for this girl. So he's super romantic. He's going to cross over, be able to get there, and it turns into a whole thing. It has Robert De Niro in it. So it has a lot of other really good actors. This movie as a family film and just a film in general is way too good to not be watched. It's way too funny. It's way too entertaining. The story, everything about it, the fantastical side of it, the fairy tale side of it, all that sort of stuff works. It's very much a much more modern, in a sense, like Princess Bride. People love Princess Bride, and this film deserves to be right along with it. So,
I'll be the new king of Stormhold.
Any of these rumors going around about a fallen star? Everyone's talking about it.
4 centuries we've waited for this.
Never fear, my sisters. When I return with our prize, all of us shall be young again.
all right, the next genre is drama. This one just kind of goes across the scope of almost everything, because every movie, for the most part, has some amount of drama. This movie, again, when it comes down to drama, it really comes down to 2 films for me. And so it could go back and forth. This could literally change. If I did this in a year and I watch them again, between these 2 films, it could change. But my number one drama of all time, but it's tied to the first one, so it's hard to say because it's weird if it was by itself, but it's Godfather Part 2. Now, while this is probably maybe the greatest film ever made in general, it's the greatest drama ever made. Now, it does, of course, owe a lot to the first one to be able to become what it is. But this story is able to tell the rise of Michael Corleone as he's coming up in the mafia, and then it's cutting back to where his dad, Marlon Brando from the first one, Robert De Niro in this one, as he's rising up, and it tells the 2 stories, the different ways, the ways they're the same, the way they're different, at both rise to power. I can see, of course, how some people may watch this movie. I know some people watch it and they thought it was boring. It's like 3 hours and 20 minutes long. To me, the first 2 Godfather films, but we'll just talk about Godfather 2, absolute masterclass in filmmaking. Watching the way that the scenes are done, the way everything's laid out, the characters, the twists, everything that happens. The reason I picked the second one overall is it feels to me that when I watch the second one, there's just something about it on an epic scope, having the 2 different stories that the first one doesn't have. But I literally might change my mind after I film this. If you haven't seen Godfather 2, watch it. Of course, watch Godfather 1 or you won't have any clue what's happening. Watch Godfather 1, then watch Godfather 2, so you know be able to see this. And then watch Godfather 3, but that's a whole other discussion.
Never marry a what? They treat their wives like shit. I didn't mean to say what. Oh! Oh! Back up! Ah! What are you doing to me? You can
I can't control him, Mikey. You're my brother, Fredo. You don't have to apologize to me.
And the next genre we'll be talking about right now is action. This is another one I try to really look at because there's some great action films out there. Now, a lot of action films, for some reason, don't want to have action. They want to take 20 minutes to get to some action. They want to have 2-3 big action scenes. I'm not quite sure why. And not sure why a lot of times people love movies like that, where they just refuse to be able to have action. Other action films I really like and I love when looking at them a lot of times are also based on movies like Commando, which I love, not only because the action is good, but also because the movie's stupid in a lot of ways, so it makes it really funny. So I wanted to find what is the best action film, and I wanted to what is a movie that has consistent action, really, really well done action, and what is just a really well done film at the same time. And I had to come down on Mad Max Fury Road. That had to be my final choice. This movie is basically an action film from beginning to end. It doesn't stop. The scenes that they do for the action in this are insane. The way they shoot these shots of this giant, basically non-stop car chase that goes on. I don't know how they shot all this stuff. I know there's some green screens and there's some real live action things, but the explosions, people flying off things, it non-stop going, and the fact that the movie on top of that, with Charlize Theron and with Tom Hardy and other actors, it is also top quality. Not only in the acting, but in the look of the film, the makeup, the effects, all the things that go on in this movie are absolutely top notch, making it, in my opinion, the greatest action film of all time. I did not expect it when I saw it originally to even be in that sort of that being a prospect for that sort of thing. I thought it looked cool, but the fact that after watching it a couple times, I was like, "What am I seeing here?" There's a part with a guy who, instead of having a drummer or whatever, like for the old time war, he's got a guitar and his eyes are closed. It could be stupid, but it works for this film. Watch this movie if you haven't seen this movie. Beginning to end, I don't know how anybody can even be bored in this movie. I don't know how anybody can say the action isn't well done in this movie. This movie even made me feel emotions the times it stops and gives these character moments. So, masterpiece of action. See this movie. And finally, my last genre is comedy. And this was the toughest of all. When discussing comedy, this is so subjective. Absolutely subjective. A comedy comes down to whether you think it's funny or not. Doesn't matter how well the film was made. Doesn't matter how good the plot is. Doesn't matter anything. When a true comedy comes down to it, you either think it's funny or you don't. And so it's really hard to try to tell people to watch certain comedies because you're just going to disagree on what is the funniest possible thing. I can't even argue and say, no, but you need to watch like the direction of this scene. You either think it's funny or you don't think it's funny. This was tough trying to think of what the funniest movie are. I went through a bunch of different films, really narrowed it down to 5. I'm like, here's the 5 that I think are probably the funniest. Then I try to think what's held up the best. I try to think of what's the most quotable. I try to think what's affected me the most. I try to think of all those sort of things. And my number one comedy of all time, you guys are all super excited about this. Everybody's super pumped up because you're just like, I got to know exactly what Sam thinks is the funniest movie of all time. And you may completely disagree with me. My number one film of all time for comedy is Office Space. Directed by Mike Judge, who did Beavis and Butthead. This movie's a lot different than that. But this movie tells a story of a guy who's had enough of his job. He goes every day to his job, sits in a cubicle. It is monotonous. He's going to go out of his mind. And he goes to see basically a hypnotist, try to help his relationship with his girlfriend. And the hypnotist, while hypnotizing him, accidentally dies, and he's stuck in this state, and he just doesn't care about anything. And so it follows this guy as he does not care about showing up to work or not showing up to work. He just wants to live his life and do nothing. It's about his dream of doing nothing. This has Jennifer Aniston in it as well, one of her early movie roles. It follows this man doing this sort of thing, and nothing to explain how funny it is, but following the monotony of all of what he's doing, his dream. There's no way to explain why the movie is as funny as it is, but it works perfectly. It can be watched over and over and over and over again. It's endlessly quotable. It's endlessly funny.
You know, I had an idea like that once, a long time ago.
Really? What was it, Tom?
Well, all right. It was a jump to conclusions mat. You see, it would be this mat that you would put on the floor and would have different conclusions written on it that you could jump to.
That is the worst idea I've ever heard in my life, Tom.
Yes, it's horrible, this idea.
All right. So thank you very much for watching my top 10 in 10 genres, these number ones in all these spots. Thank you for watching. Remember, like I said, if you can, like the video, subscribe if you haven't subscribed, comment if you can't, if you can comment, share the video, which of course will help amazingly if you can, if you want to share it. And then make sure that down below, think about what the things I said. If you disagree with me, if you have your own number one in all those genres, write it below. I have no problem having a conversation down below, or I'll write you personally a message and tell you why you're wrong. But tell me below what your favorite comedy is, favorite drama, these different sort of things. Let's interact a little bit. Maybe I can school you a little bit, like I said, and tell you why you're absolutely wrong. Thank you for watching Triple Feature. We'll be back again. Thank you.